Hello, BookTube. Recently, some of you were probably piously horrified at the sight of warfare erupting in the ranks of the OGBG, the Old Geezers book group, with first one after another of BookTube's most tedious content creators doing book hauls that looked more and more to have a whiff of brinksmanship about them. And I share that horror. Definitely, things were looking to spiral out of control. And then Jason Harrigan offered the olive branch. He offered to establish a new detente and put an end to the OGBG Cold War that had been raging in the bookstores. And thinking just demographically speaking, quite a few of you who watch this channel are too young to remember the actual Cold War, which was a decades-long confrontation between two ideologically opposed superpowers, the United States of America and the Soviet Union. Each of them was armed to the teeth with nuclear warheads that were capable of annihilating all life on Earth. And for decades, the rest of us in the world lived under that shadow. We lived under the shadow of one of those two countries deciding they had to strike first and initiating a cascading first strike protocol that would have caused all of the first and second wave missiles to be launched anyway, immediately, automatically, from land and sea, without any chance of cooler heads prevailing once the first one was launched. That cascade effect would be automated and would take out of the question any human being, be they Russian or American, running to the nearest microphone and saying, "Wait, there's been a mistake." That's the thing that we worried about, is that there'd be a full-scale nuclear exchange by accident. And that actually came close to happening many times. More times, of course, both governments put a clamp down hard on any word getting out of that. But there were many, many times during the actual Cold War when the world came an inch away from thermonuclear annihilation. Because you keep in mind, it wouldn't be one missile that was launched by accident. It would be that missile, and then automatic retaliation protocols would lock into place, and they would be across the board, from the main targets, the main batteries, the secondary, the tertiary batteries, all the batteries at sea. It would just be a full-scale exchange, even if the first missile was an accident. And there have been a handful of books on the subject that are really, really good, but those accidents did happen. Sometimes it came down to machinery malfunctioning. Sometimes it came down to one particular person, in one case, one Soviet official, who said, I don't have any outside verification for this, and I don't have any internal verification for it either. No authorization of any kind. This looks to me like an error, so I am not going to allow it to go forward. Otherwise, the whole world would have been annihilated. Many times during the Cold War that came close to happening. And the reason I bring this up is because I'm a little worried that I may cause that equivalent in the OGBG today. Quite by accident, quite unintentionally. I had an errand to run today. It was a non-bookish errand. Totally non-bookish errand. And in the course of running that errand, I ran into a friend of mine who runs a church here in Boston, the original Hound of Heaven. And it was totally random. It was totally by chance. It's a beautiful day. It's nice and warm, blue sky, cool breezes. Maybe that's what lured him out of his cloister, or I don't know, one way or another. But we got to talking, and he used to run, you've seen him if you've watched this channel endlessly. We're closing in on 4,000 videos on this channel. If you watch this channel, then you know a little bit, which is that his church runs a charity sale regularly, used to be in the pre-pandemic days. And a large part of that was books. People were dropping off boxes of books to him all the time. All the time. So that he would have a whole room in the basement that would just be full of boxes of books waiting for that sale. And he would often say to me, you know, why don't you come over and take a look over these, fill up a bag with stuff that you want before all the rest of this goes out. And I took him up on it quite often. And that sale has not been going on because of the pandemic, but the donations have been continuing. Not at the same rate, but still a large number of them. And when I ran into my friend today, he mentioned that the basement is full of books, and there isn't even going to be a sale. So why don't I come over and take 2 bags full of books? So I went, as you would have as well. Anyone would have. No one's strong enough to turn that down. So when we were done with our errands, we went back to the church, and we were having a wonderful time talking the whole time, and then he heard my confession, and then we went down into the basement, and I rooted through the boxes. And I didn't take 2 bag loads of books. That would have been excessive. But I did take a lot. And I want to show them to you. But I don't want to reinflame the OGBG Cold War. That's not my intention here. I'm willing to abide by the détente. But I want to show you, I got a bunch of books, and a lot of them are really interesting to me. They're going to go, I have 2 new bookcases here at Hyde Cottage. They are still both empty. I have meticulously cleaned them and dried them. And now I'm trying to figure out what to do with them. I don't have a camera that I can walk around with anymore. My camera bricked. Otherwise, I would lodge an iPhone on a tripod and walk you around to show you what I'm talking about. But I have 2 bookcases that I found on the sidewalk. And I don't know that they themselves are stackable. One of them isn't quite strong enough, I don't think. And the one that is strong enough is much more narrow than the one that I would stack on top of it. So that wouldn't work anyway. But I firmly believe that these are stackable with other bookcases here at Hyde Cottage, so they're not going to stay where they are. And of course, I'm going to, level them off with none of the floors here are level. You have to use shims for everything to level it out. I'm going to level them off and stack them empty before I fill them. But the way that I'm telling myself is that since I have 2 empty bookcases sitting around, I can afford to go out and get books. And besides, keep in mind, a large number of these books won't stay. This is a pattern that you've seen on Jason's own channel, where he has mentioned that he has ample space in his house for his personal library, but that an ample number of the books that he gets when he goes out used book shopping and hauls and talks about on his channel are not going to stay. My philosophy is the exact same way. I imagine every serious book acquirer has that same philosophy. When you are out and about and you have access to a large amount of cheap used books, in this case these didn't cost me anything, you hoover up everything that flickers even the slightest bit of interest. You hoover it all up, and then you will sift it out later. It's only the people who have the switch thrown in their head that makes them semi-hoarders who don't ever sift through the stuff. They just let it all pile up willy-nilly. I don't do that. A lot of these things, a lot of the books that have been in every used book haul this year will go back out again. The quest is always in any one of these expeditions for the 1 or 2 keepers, the ones that you will actually add to your library. So I don't know how many of these we shall see. The first one is a mass market paperback, and I got it because of its line rather than because of anything that I know about it. I know the author. I've read the author and I really like her. It's a romance novel. But it's not a normal romance novel. It's for teens. Specifically for teens, but not technically YA. Technically, YA as a genre didn't exist when this came out. For a little while, Avon, the publisher of Regency romances of all kinds, did a line of romances aimed at teenagers with teenage protagonists in the normal settings of romances. So a Highlander or a Regency romance or whatever. Only the 2 protagonists were teens. They weren't in their young 20s yet. And this one is by Lorraine Heath, who's fantastic. And this is Samantha and the Cowboy. This is an entry in that series. I only have one of these. There's one, I don't remember the name of it, but it's a Regency romance in which there's a Viscount and there's a virtuous young lady, and both of them are teenagers. I know there was a whole bunch of these, and I would love them all. Just to see how good they are. That one other teenage Regency romance that I have is in the romance bookshelf, and it was quite good. Intelligent, not condescending at all. So I'm hoping that this is the same way. That's rather adorable. A teenage Western romance. Then this next book was inspired by BookTube. Quite a few things here were inspired by BookTube in one way or another. I was watching David Murphy's channel, BookTube's favorite capitalist, and he mentioned the Viking Portable editions, which I have praised endlessly on this channel. I have praised them endlessly before there was such a thing as BookTube. I was praising Viking Portable editions before there was such a thing as David Murphy. I love them, absolutely love them. But until I watched his video the other day, I hadn't quite come up with the perfect phrase for why I love them, and he put it perfectly. They are the perfect introduction to the authors that they're about. There's a whole series of books put out, mass market paperbacks put out by Viking, where you get an author, and the book is an anthology of a great introduction to that author. You get an introduction by some writer or curator or whatever, and then you get whole works, partial works, shorter works, letters, that sort of thing. They are wonderful. At one point or another, I've had almost all of them. And I think I have quite a few of them today as well, but of course, Viking doesn't make them anymore. Nobody makes smart mass market paperbacks anymore. All the mass market paperbacks that exist now are cheesy science fiction, cheesy romance, and techno thrillers. No one would ever do a Viking Portable Edgar Allan Poe in mass market anymore. No one would ever do that. But watching David's video made me think, yeah, I do like them for that, and it prompted me to keep an eye out for the next Viking Portable edition that I find that I don't already have. And the one that I saw today reminded me that not all Viking Portable editions work equally well as introductions to their author. Today I got one of the strangest ones. I was kind of surprised to find that David doesn't have a lot of them. I'll have to keep an eye out for some of them for him. The Viking Portable Conservative Reader is an amazing book. One of the best books that they did. I bet he would like it a lot. But the one I found today is one of the strangest, and one of the biggest, necessarily. It's John Bailey's Viking Portable Tolstoy, in which he admits up front in his introduction that he's not including anything from Anna Karenina or War and Peace or anything like that. He's including lots of the stuff that Tolstoy was writing around those two major works, but he's not including any shorter novels here, just an idiosyncratic choices, very good choices, but still a little bit off the beaten path, some of them, by an author who knew Tolstoy's work backward and forward. And as soon as I saw this, I realized that although I do have a handful of Viking Portables, I don't have this one, so that was great. Then this next one, also inspired by BookTube, by a BookTube comment. The other day, we did a marathon, grueling, 7.5K Q&A on this channel. Just grueling. I don't know, not grueling in the sense of the questions. The questions were great. I don't know where you people get all these great questions, but in terms of duration, it went on forever and ever. It was like one 30-minute video after another. And one of the questions that I got asked for that Q&A, somebody asked, what on earth is your stance on Haruki Murakami? Sometimes you seem to disdain him, other times you seem to esteem him. This person pointed out that Killing Commendatore ranked very highly on my list of the best fiction of the year in which it appeared in an English language translation. That is very true. It's also a very good, sensible approach to life that this person seems conversant with all of my Steve Reed's lists of the year's best and worst books, going back 30 years, because I did an interregnum. So these go back all the way to 1990. This is a long, long time of those lists. And of course, the Steve Reed's best and worst book of the year is coming for 2020. Every month we get a month closer. In December, you will get the definitive not ranking, but the definitive estimate of the best and worst books in the 15 genres that I read in the year 2020. And this person was right. The person who asked that question was right. There does seem to be a discord here. And it's entirely true. There is a dissonance, and it comes from me. Not from forgetfulness, but because I don't know what to do with this author. I honestly don't. There are some things he does that I think are brilliant. There are other things that he does that I wouldn't even insult them to call them phoned in. That to me would be an insult to cell phones everywhere. They seem even worse than that. They don't even seem awake. And it's the same author. Sometimes it's the same book. Sometimes in the same book, there will be those two things. I don't know any other author like it. I wonder what history will say about Murakami. Will they rank him with Mishima and Tanizaki and the great Japanese authors? I'm willing to bet they will, but it'll take a little bit of contorting, a little bit of distorting eyeglasses. So when I saw this thing today, I grabbed it. It was free, and it is it's this. It's 1Q84. His enormous book that is. It is a Mobius strip, but it is also vaguely gestures at times at being dystopian. It vaguely gestures at other times at being high comedy or being disaster fiction. I read this when it came out. I did not know what to make of it. There were large parts of it that I didn't like at all. And that question just put this author back in my mind. So I will give this another try. I didn't have a copy of this, so I will be able to just have it there for when I'm ready. I'm not 100% sure if I have 1Q84 as an ebook. I'm not 100% sure of that with a lot of these things. That's why I got them, because a lot of you have been very generous in sending me ebooks. I put out the call a while ago because I was getting, where is it? Oh no, it's charging. I was getting a Kindle Fire, big Kindle 10-inch tablet that was only going to increase my ability to get ebooks. I put a gigantic SD card in that so to increase its memory. And that just made me hungry for as many ebooks as you could send. EPUB or PDFs or even Mobi. Even Mobi, because Mobi will work with Kindle. That is its native file function. Had a bit of a problem with that Kindle tablet that I didn't foresee. I installed the memory card in it because I was picturing that I was going to load it down with ebooks. And that I was going to do that the normal way, which is to sideload them onto my Nook app on the Kindle, rather than transform them in any way, since a lot of you are sending me EPUBs and the Kindle it doesn't support EPUB as a file. I thought, well, Nook does. So when you send me the file as an EPUB in my email, I will just sideload it onto my Nook app. And that seemed to work just fine. The books were all showing up on the Nook app, covers and all, but they don't open. They don't work. Every time I try to open one of them, it says this is an unsupported MIME file. And I have no idea what... I haven't yet found a workaround I'm sure that the device can read these things. I'm sure there's a way to do that, somehow. I just haven't figured out the way yet. But one way or another, I might have an ebook of 1Q84. If so, I will have both, at least for the time being. And then this next one is a slim little thing, and I don't know for sure that I knew that this existed. This is the author Jan Morris, who wrote a really good book on Venice. Her book on Venice is one of, there's a whole library. You could fill literally a whole library with books on Venice that have been written on Venice. But her book on Venice is a very good meditation on the city. And this seems to be Venetian history. This is the Venetian Empire. A sea voyage. I think this is just going to be Jan Morris taking a few more whacks at Venetian history. There's quite a bit of Venetian history in the book just called The World of Venice, but this might be more of that. I'm hoping that when I dig around in the fine print of this, I don't learn that this is just that book, that this is just the Venice book under a different title. That would be a little bitter. I'd like to think this is a separate book, but it's a separate edition anyway. And this next one, also slightly inspired by BookTube, although I'm not sure that I would have passed it up anyway, because this is Library of America. And just the other day, Jason Harrigan on his channel, Byways in Bookland, was doing a haul and showed the Library of America volume of the major writings of Willa Cather. And he commented in that video that the Library of America volumes, he had two comments about them. One is that they are, comparatively, you don't see them as often in Ireland. I can imagine that. I can definitely imagine that. They're a little pricey. They're $35 a piece. And most people who get them really want them. And most people who get them collect them. They want a whole wall of Library of America volumes. Once upon a time, at a used bookstore that doesn't exist anymore in Boston, once upon a time, I used to go there once a week. And once upon a time, I went in there, and the whole wall behind the register had been taken apart and dedicated to Library of America volumes. The store had bought an entire collection of Library of America from somebody, and it was just the wall behind the register. And I was friendly with the guy who always ran the register. I was not quite so friendly with the owners, but they were never there. But I was friendly with the guy who ran the register, and I told him, I'm halfway tempted to just buy 10 of these every time I come in, until I bought this whole collection, until I have this wall in my own home. And he said to me, there's been almost no interest in them. People don't even pay attention to them. So, you could easily do that. You could easily do that. I can let you know if suddenly somebody expresses interest, so you can hurry the pace up. I didn't do that. I love Library of America volumes. The other observation that Jason had was that they're squat. They're squatter books than he thought. Yeah, they are wonderfully designed for the hand. They are a perfect size. They're not the normal size hardcover. They're a little bit bigger than a mass market paperback, but a lot of them are smaller than the dimensions of a normal trade paperback. It's a wonderful, wonderful volume, and it's acid-free pages, and it's sewn binding, and there's almost nothing in the way of editorial falderall to get in the way of you enjoying the book. It's just a delightful project that was done. And so, naturally, I was primed to notice the next Library of America volume that I came across. I came across one today, but it's rare, too. Coming across used Library of America volumes in the United States is not as rare as it is in Ireland. But coming across this particular thing is a little bit unusual. I don't see them that often. Because the Library of America also has paperbacks. And I think they were done for schools, but I almost never see them used. And I found one today from Melville. Look at that. A Library of America paperback from Melville. Exact same thing as the hardcover. This has Moby Dick and Billy Budd, and it has a ton of shorter stuff. Bartleby the Scrivener and Benito Cereno and a whole bunch of other stuff. A really good Melville volume to have. So the major works in here are, what do we got here? Moby Dick in its entirety, Bartleby the Scrivener, Benito Cereno, Billy Budd, Hawthorne and His Mosses, tons of poetry. Oh, and that's it. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, so the notable thing about that table of contents, aside from Moby Dick, which Ami 857359 Electric Boogaloo, this time it's personal, whatever his channel is called, he's doing a great series of almost hallucinatory commentaries on Moby Dick as he reads it. So it was great to have that. It was great to see this because I don't have this Library of America volume in the hardcover. So now I have this anyway. Then this next one, I love this author, and I had no idea that he had been reprinted, ever. He wrote an enormous amount, a whole bookcase full of books. What I wouldn't give to have them all. In every single subject, every single genre that he wrote in. This is Victor Bridges. And apparently somebody at the British Library, is that what this is? The British Library? Decided to reprint one of his murder mysteries, Trouble on the Thames, with a nice noirish cover. Fantastic. Just fantastic. I haven't read this book. I think this came out in 1945. I haven't read it in, I don't even know, 60 years, something like that. I can't wait. Can't wait to see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Victor Bridges is not a good writer. Maybe he doesn't deserve to be remembered. Maybe I'm remembering him through rose-colored glasses. We shall see. This falls right in line with one of the indulgences that I've been doing in all of 2020, which is murder mysteries. Murder mysteries and science fiction short stories. I have been indulging extensively in 2020, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon, so I was happy to find that. Then this next one, also obliquely inspired by BookTube, because I saw a video the other day in which someone was talking about assessing the great works of the 21st century. Of course, this being BookTube, they were talking about fiction. No matter what Olive and I do, it's everybody's default answer is fiction. But this person was talking about great books of the 21st century and wondering, can we tell? Are there any clear choices? That sort of thing. And although she didn't mention this book, a lot of people in her comments field did. And I smiled at that because I think it's brilliant. I think it's a great novel. But I don't have a copy. Didn't have a copy. And now I do. Once again, this is Helen DeWitt. This is The Last Samurai. It's technically a 2020 book. I think it came out in the year 2000. So we'll call that. We'll call that technically the 21st century. And this is the story of a mother and her extremely weird, extremely gifted boy. But it takes in the whole of the universe, and it is amazing. Just incredible. And I'm not sure that I'm in love with this garish yellow thing. I think this is probably a UK paperback of some kind or other. Actually, do we know? I know already because of the paper. Yeah, Chatto and Windus. This is London. So this is a UK paperback of this, and who knows what it looks like now. It might not be in print anymore. I cannot recommend this novel highly enough. I just cannot do it. So I was happy to find it for the fiction section of this unexpected book haul. And then this next one is A Second Chance. It's also fiction, but this is a galley copy. This is a review copy, leading me to believe that I am not the only book reviewer who lives within walking distance of this particular church, because this is something we've seen on this channel before. It's Jen Lyons, and this is The Ruin of Kings, which is book 1 in her epic fantasy series that was hyped by Tom Doherty Press. This came out in 2019. I don't remember the name of the series. This was hugely hyped. I got the advanced copy of this. I hauled it on this channel. I got the finished copy. I'm sure I hauled it on this channel. And I read it, and I liked it very much. But I got rid of both of those, and I'm not 100% sure why. And I haven't read, if there's another book in the series, I don't know about it, and I haven't read it. And I'm assuming that there will be, so I kind of want this. I'm going to want to refresh my memory, especially since I remember enjoying it. And then this next one also obliquely inspired by BookTube, of course, because because I've spent a lot of time up at the old farmhouse in Vermont with Mark Richardson, who hosts the BookTube channel Richardson Reads. And Mark and I have spent a lot of time on the world's open oceans, a huge amount of time, in radically different capacities. I was usually hiring boats, the boats of people who most certainly did not want to meet Mark, because he was there in a law enforcement capacity on the open ocean. And a lot of the people that I hired were a few shades on the shady side. They would not have wanted to see him. They would not have wanted him to step on board and say, I am the captain now. We're not in anything like that. But one way or another, we both have a sweet tooth for maritime nautical stuff. He has a huge collection up there in that little farmhouse. Just mouth-watering collection. And I have a few books, and when I saw this thing, I realized, oh my God, you don't have that. And I have read it, and I loved it, and I didn't have a copy, and this was free. So this is Lincoln Payne, The Sea and Civilization. His big, look at the deckle edges on that thing, a big narrative history of the human relationship with the ocean. Wait, there's a bookmark in here. Oh, wow, how perfect. Sun Porch Books, Martha's Vineyard. Oh, my. Okay, now this is going to be just unbelievably embarrassing if this turns out to be my own copy. That's just going to be unbelievably embarrassing. Let's check and see. No, it is not. Thank God. Thank God. I have never held this copy of this book before, but it's terrific. Absolutely terrific. I saw Mark on his channel just the other day, held up the Boundless Ocean by David Abulafia, or The Boundless Sea, whichever the book's title was. I reviewed it, so I really got to remember the title. But it's an absolutely terrific book, a brick of a thing, 3 times longer than this, but along the same lines of the maritime history of humans and encounters with the ocean. I remember loving this book. So and the minute I saw it, I thought, oh my, the thing when you see something like this in a box or on a shelf, and you've had an experience with the book, you've had it at one point in your collection and yourself. The first thought that comes to my mind is, I don't even know that I'd call it a thought. Immediately in my mind, sort of astral project to my own library and look for the book on the shelves. I sort of have a snap, engrammatic look at the books that are currently in my collection, and I know right away from that astral projection, from that look in my mind at my collection, whether or not I actually do have a copy of the book. It's sometimes, many times, most times, I'll look at a book that's vaguely of interest, and I'll say, no, I have that, know exactly where it is. When that mental flash, or whatever it is, turns up negative, no, you don't have this anymore, then that feels terrible. And I rectified it right away. I grabbed this like an octopus. And then this next one is a little bit on the melancholy side. Not the book itself. The book itself is rollicking good. This is The Art of Scandal. This is a biography of Isabella Stewart Gardner, the socialite and art plunderer of Boston a century ago. And this is written by Douglas Shantucci. And I have had this book on and off over the years. I have Mrs. Jack by Louisa Hall Tharp, which is a much earlier biography of Mrs. Gardner, and which is terrific, absolutely terrific. And I hadn't had a copy of this. I had the advanced copy from the publisher. I had a finished copy from the publisher. I had a finished copy after that, forever and ever. When I got rid of both of those, I got rid of both of those. Got rid of that later finished copy. I saw this and realized that I don't have a copy. And I do want it. If I can have 8 biographies of Nathaniel Hawthorne, or 8 biographies of Lord Byron, I can have 2 biographies of Isabella Stewart Gardner and her time. That's not the main draw for this book, though, and it's not the melancholy aspect. The melancholy aspect is the author, Douglas Shantucci, who was a pioneering researcher of Ralph Adams Cram. He was a best-selling author of books about Boston architecture, or the pre-Stonewall Boston gay life and whatnot. Just a fantastic Baroque stylist and a great researcher, whose books I just loved. And then one day he wandered into my bookstore, and we struck up a friendship. We struck up a conversation and a friendship. As I said to him when he wandered in, "Who knew you were still alive?" And he went. he was by this point very old and a little ailing. He was prickly. The prickliness that comes from being one of the smartest people in any given room. And he hadn't been to work on anything in a while, and that struck me as fascinating. And through a series of conversations, through a series of what I consider to be staggering good luck on my part, he agreed to start writing original material for Open Letters Monthly, the online literary journal where I was the managing editor. I was just flabbergasted. I thought the most that I could get from him maybe would be occasionally for him to annotate something older that he wrote. But he actually had a book in mind, a new book in mind, called The Gods of Copley Square. Those of you who aren't familiar with Boston, Copley Square is right in the heart of the outer part of the city. So the inner part of the city, Downtown Crossing, the Boston Common, the Massachusetts State House, there's that, but then quickly the city moved outward. And Copley Square was one of the great pre-planned places right near the rail yards that used to be over there. It was the home of the original hospital, home of the original library, home of the original museum, the art museum, home of the original medical offices before they moved across the river. And Douglas saw all that as all happening at around the same time, and all in the shadow of Trinity Church. And he decided to write a book about the pioneering men and women of those times, and the things that they were doing, and the things that were putting Boston on the map. And he was going to call the thing The Gods of Copley Square. And we ran quite a few chapters of that book on Open Letters, and it was a downright thrill. And Douglas was an old-style writer. None of this, no real business happened over email. Instead, it was all in person. And he was also an old-style writer in that he required an editor. And I don't mean that. He's no longer alive, unfortunately. He's no longer alive. But I don't mean that in the sense of sloppiness. I mean he required an editor because his work was so intricate that he really required a second pair of eyes that knew his subject to help with places where he might go astray, or his style of writing might lead him into a baroqueness that the reader won't understand. And he and I got into it quite a bit. Not always with complete happiness. Sometimes when you have an editorial relationship like that, it can be a little contentious. And Douglas wasn't afraid to show that. And he was a little bit taken aback that I wasn't afraid to show it either. And they ended up being tremendously rewarding experiences and some great essays. I don't know if The Gods of Copley Square actually survived the transition from Open Letters Monthly to Open Letters Review. I don't know. The old server for Open Letters Monthly is no longer operative, and I don't know if those essays survived. But they were the genesis of a book, and they got a flame going inside Douglas again that hadn't been there for a while. Started to plug that work elsewhere, started to plug himself elsewhere and get teaching and lecturing gigs elsewhere on the strength of that, and was going to write the book. Now, he died before he could finish it, and I don't know what's become of it. I have no idea what's become of The Gods of Copley Square. But at one point in one of those bare-knuckle editing sessions, he paid me an enormous compliment, and he didn't know how much of an enormous compliment it was. He mentioned to me at one point, not during the session, but afterwards when tempers had cooled and we were emailing each other just to make sure that everything was all right, he emailed me and said, this probably isn't going to mean anything to you, but you remind me very much, in all the best possible ways, of the best editor I've ever had. Cass Canfield, a man named Cass Canfield. My jaw dropped. Douglas didn't know when he told me that I had been a friend of Cass Canfield. You couldn't have paid me a higher compliment than to refer back to that old world of editing and commissioning and thinking and reading. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful, and I never did anything as fangirlish as to bring a copy of this book to Douglas and have him inscribe it. I was good enough to me that we were having lunches and that we were getting to know each other, and that was a lot of fun. So I got this because I don't have a copy, and I should. I should have the two major biographies of Isabella Stewart Gardner, and I should have something by Douglas Shantucci. I don't have the Crimson Letter, which is his great book about again, about pre-Stonewall's sort of sotto voce code word gay life at Harvard. I should have a copy of that book. Next time one shows up at the Brattle, I will grab it because it's really, really good. It's very different from The Art of Scandal. The Art of Scandal is different from anything else that Douglas wrote. This was worked over very much for a public audience, for a popular audience. This was a front page, full color review in the New York Times Book Review. And it did really well. It was on sale at the Gardner Museum, of course. It was book club selections, all that sort of thing. Most of the rest of the stuff that Douglas wrote is a little bit more tangled than that. It isn't quite so much the flung open welcome mat for all readers. Still really good, but very much the history of his day, of almost a century ago, where there aren't as many concessions made to the reader. I myself have a sweet tooth for that sort of history writing, but I should have this book at least. And then this last book is also sort of a reference to BookTube, because a few BookTubers have pulled this out, and I also brought it into prominence because I did a random questions tag a while ago that I foisted on the BookTube world, in which I talk about Jacques Barzun. One of the questions is, have you ever met or married the critic Jacques Barzun? And quite a few of you, none of you have married him. And quite a few of you had not even heard of him. But he wrote a whole lot of books, and a lot of them are very interesting to read. He was a little bit insufferable in terms of his pomposity, but he started cropping up on a couple of OGBG book hauls, and mainly because of this book, From Dawn to Decadence. A huge sort of intellectual overview of the literature and culture of humanity in the last 500 years, and mainly since the Enlightenment. And I originally dismissed this book when it came out. When this was in the 80s? This came out? 2000, the year 2000. I originally dismissed it as just another example of what I always refer to as how boring old men can be. Old men can be very, very boring. They only have their own cartwheels to ride in, and they have their view of the world, and nothing's ever going to change it or enhance it or shade it with any kind of doubt or detail. And you can tell from the title of this book what the old man's opinion is here, that the world has been getting worse the older it's been getting. And that explains why it's so terrible as Jacques Barzun looks around him in the year 2000. Utterly ridiculous. Just utterly ridiculous. Just absolute nonsense. But I realized after the fact that that theory might... Excuse me. I realized I had it back then, 20 years ago, that theory might be ridiculous. It is, on its face, ridiculous. But this book is a gigantic helping of one of the smartest and best-read people in the world in his day, talking about every literary and historical figure that comes to his mind over the course of 500, 600, 700 pages. That alone makes it worth a reread. Absolutely it does. And this cropped up. I think Mark found a copy of this or already had one. And when Jacques Barzun had came up, when people did that 20 random questions tag, this was often the book that they knew about. This was the book that they had or had seen. And Jason Harrigan found it or hauled a copy of it just recently and said that it was going in his library. So, of course, I wanted to have this thing, and this is inscribed. It's got an inscription right there on the front. It says, what have we got here? Dear Vivian, all the best, J. Barzun. Oh, this is going to make keeping the détente a little harder, isn't it? P.S. That Jason Harrigan is rather tedious, isn't he? Oh, my. Oh, goodness. It seems Jacques Barzun did not like Jason Harrigan. Well, the détente can survive. Even so, it can survive. Jacques Barzun is long dead, after all, and he would have disdained BookTube. But who knew? Anyway, that's a little awkward note to end on. But anyway, that's a book haul for today. It is very much a peacekeeping olive branch book haul. I am not meaning this as an escalation of the Cold War at all. I just happen to be in the presence of an entire basement full of boxes crammed full of books, overflowing onto the floor full of books, with the proprietor saying, take as many as you want. Fill a bag, fill 2 bags. I ask you, would any of you have refused? I don't think so. So I had to do it. So those are our books for today. We have From Dawn to Decadence by Jacques Barzun, a rather salty opinion of Jason Harrigan, but nobody's perfect. Then we have The Art of Scandal by the late and great Douglas Shantucci. We have The Last Samurai by Helen DeWitt, a great 21st century novel. What else have we got here? Oh, yes. The Sea and Civilization by Lincoln Payne. A seminal book on maritime history to have. We have The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyon, the first book in an epic fantasy series that I really need to reread. We have 1Q84 by the ever-problematic Haruki Murakami. We have a paperback Library of America volume by the ever-problematic Herman Melville. What else here? We have The Venetian Empire by Jan Morris. Perfect companion to her Venice book, unless it is her Venice book. We have Trouble on the Thames by Victor Bridges, one of his... Let's see here. I'm losing the thread here. One of his many, many, many books. This one happens to be a murder mystery. Then The Viking Portable Tolstoy, with John Bailey as the Master of Ceremonies. And finally, one of these Avon teen romances. This is Samantha and the Cowboy. And this makes 2 that I have now of those. I'll have to look for more. I'm pretty sure that I covered every book that was in that basement. I'm pretty sure that I did. And I got one extra book today. In addition to all of these, I got one extra book that is in my Daily Penguin. It's a Penguin Classic that is not... I didn't put it in this video. It's in that one. But I'm pretty sure I went through every book in that basement. I don't think I left anything behind that I wanted. We shall see. We shall see next time. I wasn't planning on going there at all. I happened to meet the guy himself. Anyway, I am not, repeat, not getting any used books tomorrow. None. I am not, repeat, not getting any used books tomorrow. so I'm going to wrap this up. Sorry about the length, but I do love talking about books. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.